In today's video, we'll be looking at some of the most unbelievable coincidences that you can find on TikTok.
These are 1 in a million coincidences. Alright, so first we have this picture of a blind kid finding a 4-leaf clover by himself.
I've never found
If that's not luck, I don't know what is. Next we have this picture of a gator eating a fish and the fish is eating another fish. And during a class picture in the UK, these 3 students standing next to each other look very familiar. Can you tell me who they look like? And finally, during a storm, trees had fallen on several cars. But when one of the owners went to check on his car, the tree was literally 1 inch away, and no damage was done to his car at all.
The biggest coincidences in the world. A reporter was asking people on the street in the UK if they remember the final round of the 1967 FA Cup soccer game. And the person he interviewed turned out to be the goalie who played in the game, and look how happy he was.
Do you remember it?
I do, I played in it.
Did you?
I was goalkeeper for Liverpool.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's a stroke of luck.
Yeah, that is a wild coincidence right there.
Tommy Lauren.
Shortly before their wedding, Nick and Amy decided to go through Nick's baby photos. In this picture of him playing at the beach during a vacation, Amy noticed herself in the background 11 years before they ever met. Out of every clover this blind boy could have picked in a field, he picked the 4-leaf clover. And the back of this truck matched up perfectly with the mountains in the background.
3 crazy coincidences that are hard to believe. Part 2. 1. An American named Matthew survived last year's terrorist attack on the Bataclan Theatre in Paris by playing dead after being shot. What's even more amazing is that 14 years earlier, on September 11, 2001, he narrowly avoided another terrorist attack when a United Airlines plane struck one of the Twin Towers while he was passing the building on his way to a meeting.
Oh, he cheating death.
2.
Final Fantasy.
A set of twins from Ohio who were separated at birth grew up without any knowledge of each other's existence. Their lives did, however, share a number of strange similarities. They were both named James on their adoptions, they both grew up to be police officers, and both of them married women named Linda. But that's not all.
Are they the same person?
Each had a son, one named James Allen and the other one named James Allen, and each also had a dog named Toy. Both brothers later got divorced, and both ended up remarrying women named Betty. 3.
They're the
A
same
Dutch
people.
cyclist named Martin de Jonge has escaped not 1 but 2 major plane crashes in his life. Not only was he supposed to be on board missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 before deciding to take a flight that departed an hour earlier, he was also supposed to fly on Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, the one that was shot down over Ukraine in 2014, before changing to a different flight in order to save money.
Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul, was once the proud capital city of the Byzantine Empire. It stood gloriously for over 1,100 years with huge, unbreachable walls that reached 40 feet high and stretched a mile around the city's perimeter. But in 1453, the fortress city was impossibly conquered by the invading Ottoman Empire. It was such a powerful move that its repercussions marked the end of the Middle Ages. As startling as the historic takeover sounds, it was nothing in comparison to the prophecy that foretold its demise. Translated from a long-standing ancient Greek philosophy, it was predicted that Constantinople would always endure, provided that the moon in its full circle did not give a sign in the sky. And guess what? On May 22, 1453, a lunar eclipse partially blocked out the moon during the invasion. In fact, the moon had been central to Byzantine culture for over 1,123 years. So this must have felt like more than just a terrifying coincidence for those trapped behind the city walls.
Crazy coincidences you won't believe actually happened, Part 10. In 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on a business trip, and on the day he was supposed to leave, the US dropped their first atomic bomb. He had been 2 miles from where the bomb was dropped, but miraculously, he survived with minor injuries. He returned home to his wife and infant son in Nagasaki, where he went to work just 3 days later. As he was describing his experience to his supervisor, the US dropped their second bomb, this time on Nagasaki. Again, he was just 2 miles from the explosion, but this time he survived without any injuries. He ended up living to the age of 93 and died of stomach cancer in 2010.
1 in a million coincidences.
Survived.
These trucks lined up.
He survived both of those bombs and died of stomach cancer.
up perfectly on the highway to spell out Taylor Swift. These two ladies on the subway looked exactly alike and were doing the exact same thing. This person took a photo at the exact moment this balloon popped. This is insane. This person's cat looked identical to the cat on the food package. And this lady's dress matched perfectly with this tree to create a perfect camouflage.
Oh, I thought that was her dress. I'm like, dang, she got an extravagant dress on, but that's the tree in the background.
Biggest coincidences in the world. The guys in these pictures look the exact same, but they're not even related. The first picture is Enzo Ferrari, who was a race car driver and the founder of Ferrari. The other guy is a soccer player named Mesut. But the scariest part is that Enzo died in 1988, which is the same year that Mesut was born. 1 in a million coincidences that you won't believe happened. Firstly, the paint on this truck lined up perfectly with the mountains. The water being thrown on this elephant looks exactly like the elephant. This guy wore a Mario costume, but he looks more like Mario than Mario does himself. This news reporter looks exactly like the robber that's on the loose. Here we have Jake Gyllenhaal's worst nightmare. These two trucks lined up to say Taylor Swift. This is insane. This bird landed on a page about itself. And this couple realized they were in each other's photos a few years before they met. That's meant to be.
Crazy coincidences you won't believe are true. 40 years ago, a 17-year-old boy was knocked off of his moped and killed by a taxi in Bermuda. The world was shocked by this because almost exactly 1 year prior, his also at the time 17-year-old brother was hit by a taxi and killed on the exact same street while riding on the exact same moped. Now you're thinking, okay, mopeds are somewhat dangerous. Maybe they both were reckless drivers. They live in the same neighborhood, so it's likely that he was on the same moped and got hit on the same street. Well, it gets even weirder. The taxi that hit the second brother was the same exact taxi that hit the first brother. Not only that, but it was the same taxi driver that hit both brothers. The taxi driver was also carrying the exact same passenger in both accidents. Robert Morgan wrote The Wreck of the Titan in 1898, and there are some uncanny similarities between the fictional book and the actual events of the Titanic. He named the ship Titan, which both the names Titan and Titanic mean unsinkable. Both ships ran into trouble when they hit icebergs on the starboard side of the ship. They were both 400 miles off Newfoundland in the North Atlantic when they sank, both on April nights. The ships were nearly identical in length, speed of movement, and total capacity of passengers.
Fishy about this.
In both cases, the passengers suffered tragically due to a shortage of lifeboats. This band was struck by lightning 7 times, yes, 7 times, and survived all of them. Roy Sullivan, aka the Human Lightning Rod, was a park ranger in Virginia that still holds the Guinness World Record for being struck by lightning more than any other human on Earth.
7
He was
times?
struck in his front yard, outside of a fire lookout tower, and even one time while he was in his pickup truck, a lightning bolt struck a tree next to him and it deflected into his open window, searing his arm and knocking him unconscious. While he was fishing, lightning struck directly on his head, setting his hair, eyelashes, and eyebrows on fire. Shortly after he was struck by lightning in this moment, he had to strike a bear in the face because it was coming to the pond to steal the trout on his fishing line. Sullivan struggled later in life, claiming that people just thought he was really bad luck and they did not want to be around him. He recalls the feeling in multiple of these incidences that he was literally being followed by the storm clouds. He always kept a bucket of water in his truck to make sure he was always prepared. His death, however, was caused by a gunshot and not a lightning strike. One night, a woman and her friend were pulling into Taco Bell when they almost hit a guy on a bike. He flipped over his handlebars but got up while the cars were being funneled into the drive-thru, so the drivers didn't say anything. Fast forward years later, the woman and her friend were hanging out with the woman's husband, who started telling a story about how he was on his way to his cousin's house on his bike when he flipped over on his handlebars. The woman's friend jokingly said, "Was it in front of a Taco Bell?" Which he replied, "Yes, it was right in front of a Taco Bell and I almost got hit by a car." In 2002, a pair of 70-year-old twins died on the same day. Both men were struck and killed by trucks on the same stretch of road about a mile apart within 2 hours of each other. The last twin to die had no knowledge of his brother's death when he set out on his own bike. A woman moved to a different city and got a job at a hotel. She met her boyfriend working there, and early in their relationship, they were talking about where they lived, and she mentioned her street. He said he had just moved from that street. Turns out her boyfriend not only lived in the exact same house, but in the exact same room that she did. In 1950, a church in a small Nebraska town exploded. The explosion happened at 7:25 p.m., and choir always started on those nights at 7:20 p.m. All 15 members were all late to choir that day for their own personal reasons and were nowhere near the church when it exploded. Follow for more crazy coincidences.
1 in a million coincidences. This bird landed on the page about itself. This Pepsi can exploded in the freezer and the soda froze midair.
Wow.
This dog's ear has a dog face that looks exactly like him.
Oh, snap.
What are the chances this bird saved a car from a speeding ticket by blocking its license plate? And this little kid looks identical to the fire hydrant.
Yo, there's some crazy coincidences out there, aren't there? It's like, wow, it's just amazing how the universe works sometimes. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe, turn your notification bell on, and until next time, YouTube, peace.